Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome aboard our stream today. So good to have you aboard. Today we have so much to go ahead and go through. We're going to talk about just a couple of DC comics, but the vast majority of our coverage, per usual, is really going to be focused on Marvel's line of comics. Particularly today, we are set to explore Marvel Comics' Ultimate line of titles. It really seems like there's some pretty big developments there that we're going to touch on. Plus, a little bit later on in our stream, we're going to be talking about a brand new comic book project from Marvel over from the master of comics, Jonathan Hickman himself. That's going to be a super fun thing to talk about. Plus, the artist that Jonathan Hickman is paired with over on this project is really, really phenomenal. So, we're going to have just so much to talk about a little bit later on in our stream today. I want to talk about some of the video reviews that we came out with a little bit earlier on the week over for the channel. So we had X-Men 32, which was, I think, just a great comic book series really devoted to fleshing out the relationship behind the children of the Vault being Sync and Talon. Really watching their relationship drama develop as the last stages of the Krakoan era hit the X-Men is really, really fascinating here. Plus, I really love how Jerry Duggan has been able to utilize the really large cast of characters for the core X-Men run, in addition to like usual series mainstays with characters like Sync and Talon. We also have some heroes off the beaten path from the Marvel Universe, like Spider-Man, as well as Miss Marvel. The way that these two characters were tied into this threat with Nimrod was just a great way to expand on the world of the X-Men and pull some additional Marvel Universe characters in. If you aren't reading the core X-Men book, you should. It is a ton of fun right now coming in from Marvel. Elsewhere on the channel this week, we also had Batman and Robin, or excuse me, not Batman and Robin, but Birds of Prey issue 6. That was a pretty phenomenal comic book title as well. I think one of the fun ones about that particular issue was how it brought the artist of Leonardo Romero back into the fold after he just made, just a brief absence towards, I believe, the previous issue of the series. So fantastic to have him back over on the comic book. I just think the way that he's able to illustrate the expressions and capture, I think the subtext from Kelly Thompson's writing just makes that series like so phenomenal. There's just an incredible amount of subtext behind the pages, behind the expressions that like Harley Quinn and Black Canary have as characters. I really find myself like really getting invested not only in the actual plot of the series, but in the individual characters too. And Birds of Prey issue 6 was a really phenomenal transitional moment for the series as it kind of moved away from the really interesting landmark Megadeth story and then headed into a brand new tale. There was just so many interesting like plot revelations and just interesting pieces of lore that fills in, I think, some plot holes from the existing Megadeth story if you go and check out that 6th issue. Plus, the last couple pages, which we also got the chance to talk about over in our review, were just so beautiful. It really seemed like Leonardo Romero was able to stretch himself as an artist and really depict some different page designs than we've seen from him previously. This was also an issue that had a lot of elements of the character of Megara, so it was really cool to see Leonardo Romero capture all those elements too. But without further ado here, it looks like our stream is set to start right now. I want to officially welcome you aboard. My name is Arakko. We have so much fun stuff over on our stream today. First off, I want to encourage you, if you enjoy our streams, please go ahead, click that like button. Also, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. And yeah, I think we can go ahead and just shoot right into our first story. I am woefully behind, sadly, on DC Comics, but I am reading a few ongoing series. We're going to start off our stream just on a bit of a different note than usual and head right into a preview for the latest issue of one of my favorite DC Comics series. That is none other than Batman and Robin. This is an issue coming in from Joshua Williamson and Nicholas Sismessager over on the series. A lot of previous Batman and Robin issues have been drawn by Simone DeMeo, as well as this cover too. As you can see, there is just so much interesting shading from DeMeo's line across Batman and Robin. It's a lot different having an artist like Nicholas Sismessager. but I think there's something about this way that this comic book really caters to like a young adult reader with the pursuit of Damian Wayne entering in Gotham High School, especially as Bruce and Damian begin to really investigate the mysterious character known as Shush. So, in recent issues of Batman and Robin, Bruce and Damian even believe that Shush may be Damian Wayne's school principal, whose name is Principal Stone within the issue. And they even have a tip off within the last couple issues of Batman and Robin that this character known as Zach is up to something over during the soccer team. He's like a star player over at Gotham High. Throughout his tenure, Zach is just one of the popular kids, and he's really gotten in with an interesting crowd here. But it looks like there's more to this character than meets the eye, and he has a mysterious relationship with this character known as Shush. So without further ado here, let's go ahead and take a look at the interior preview pages over on Batman and Robin 6, coming in from Adventures in Poor Taste. Who is Shush? The dynamic duo has proven they can work as Batman and Robin countless times, but now they must work together as Bruce and Damian stop a deadly killer. On a soccer field, the mystery of who is Shush and what they are doing in Gotham continues to grow. But Damian is confronted with a blast from his past that wants him to leave his father and Gotham. Before we get into the preview here, one of my favorite parts about Batman and Robin is just the fact that Joshua Williamson has been working with the Robin character for such a long time now across so many like disparate comics. There's all these plot threads over from the main Robin series that have just continued to slowly spill into Batman and Robin. So just really interested to see where that goes, if any of that is referenced within this preview here. Let's take a look at some of these pages coming in from the wonderful Nicholas Messenger. Looks like we have colors from Rex Locus and letters from Steve Wands. Yeah, as you can see here, I think this art is just a total 180 from everything that we've seen from DeMeo. But I really think you can see what I'm saying here about the just really expressionistic art lending a really good sense of movement over to this character of Zach as we get this collage sequence and get filled in on like all the disparate pieces of his life. As you know, he's helping out blocking over on the soccer team. He's the teacher's pet over with Principal Stone. And we see him interacting with his peers. I'm really interested on this panel if any of the other characters, featured in this panel are also working with Stone and have a mysterious relationship to Batman and Robin or even Gotham City as a whole. This is a pretty fantastic page over from Sis Messenger featuring Victor Zsasz. This is actually a really, really phenomenal preview. There's so many like individual lines, carved out throughout this piece, within Zsasz here. Zsasz right now is set to go into court. So he's got a bit of a public appearance here. And it looks like this character of Zach has some, mysterious tie or connection to Zsasz. And then on the next page, we can see Batman and Robin getting clued into the fact that something mysterious may be happening with Zsasz as he's set to appear in court. In some of these final panels here, we also see a mention that it looks like Zach is not in school on this day, on that same day that Zsasz happens to be transferred within court here. So there's a lot of just mysterious coincidences happening within the scope of Batman and Robin issue 6. Also, I think one of the really interesting saving graces on this page is just this really creepy and interesting look from Victor Zsasz. I wish there was a little bit more detail rendered in some of the panels here, but overall, I think there's a great sense of expression from Sis Message's line, and man, this final panel in the bottom left corner of the screen is really saving face for me on this page. We have a mysterious explosion encountered on that same day that Zsasz is set to appear in court. Once again, really interesting, really busy page depicting just a massive explosion and Bruce immediately calling to Robin. Yeah, I think this preview is super, super interesting. It doesn't quite reveal, what the relationship is between Victor and Zach within the scope of the issue. I think it does a great job teasing what Principal Stone has in store for some of our characters. And I also think this page just shows the true scope of what Sis Messenger is capable of as an artist. While I don't think all these pages are just absolutely fantastic, I think a lot of them are pretty solid, and I'm just really excited to see how Sis Messenger develops as an artist. I've really enjoyed not only his Twitter presence, but also seeing the various comic books he's worked on over at DC. It's always great to see his art represented at the publisher. Listen, I'm so excited about Batman and Robin still. I think this is a phenomenal comic book. I am so impressed with everything Joshua Williamson is doing at DC Comics. Got nothing but good things to say about this series. Go check it out. All right, I'm going to take a brief break here, and then we are actually going to head into our Marvel news. We have quite a lot of Marvel stuff to go over today. It's been a pretty big news week for the publisher. Let's see here. So, our first story is actually one of the biggest and one of the most unexpected. When you ask me what Jonathan Hickman projects I expect to see at the future of Marvel Comics, I think the very last thing you would hear, come out of my mouth is a brand new Doctor Doom series. But it looks like Marvel Comics is indeed set to launch a brand new Doom comic book centered around Jonathan Hickman's writing and Sanford Green's amazing art. This is an incredible creative team over on this new series. Also, one thing to note is that Jonathan Hickman has worked with Doctor Doom really extensively throughout so many comic books. One really cool aspect about this cover that I'm just appreciating now is the fact that the Secret Wars storyline is seemingly referenced directly on the page, hinting that this Doom series might have something else to do with Marvel's greater continuity. Joe Monger says, I'm excited for Sanford Green. As am I. Sanford Green is just an incredible artist. It's so good to see him paired with Jonathan Hickman. I would never expect Marvel to put, this creative team together, but I'm so glad they have. Let's go ahead and explore what some of the plot revelations, what kind of narrative and continuity that Jonathan Hickman is bringing to this brand new Doom series. This one published on February 9th, just yesterday. Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Green reveal the final fate of Doctor Doom. This may experience a visionary new take on Marvel's most iconic villain in Hickman and Green's Doom #1. Nothing stands in the way of Doctor Doom, no hero, no villain, not even the limits of space and time. But all things must come to an end, and this May, legendary creators Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Green send Victor Von Doom on his final journey in Doom 1. This breathtaking one-shot from two of the industry's most mind-bending talents will showcase a universe-shattering battle between Doom and Galactus. A timeless testament to Doom's unmatched hubris, determination, and self-preservation, Doom #1 will encapsulate everything that makes Doom one of pop culture's greatest villains in one standalone saga, perfect for all fans. Witness Doom team up with one of the only people he respects, Valeria Richards, to save all that is and to try and attain a cosmic status that he's only ever dreamed of. Okay, one of my favorite parts about this article is trying to figure out the meta-narrative of which comic books Jonathan Hickman is bringing from his past works. I'm sure you could have already anticipated this, but it looks like Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run with artists like the tremendous Dale Eaglesham are referenced directly here. I remember the storyline over with Valeria Richards and Doctor Doom. I think their characterization in Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four series was just absolutely wonderful. Seeing him pick up on that same plot thread all these years later, I think should tease out some really fantastic stories. In the near future, Doom must save the Marvel Universe. Witness Doctor Doom on a journey unlike any he has undertaken before. With Valeria Richards at his side, Doom goes on a quest to harness more power than any human has ever wielded before in order to try and stop Galactus from bringing about the death of the universe. I really hope that there is no romantic relationship between these characters because I think that would make absolutely no sense. Valeria is way too young. But it's just the idea that maybe Valeria's intellectual prowess kind of matches Victor's. And I think that's what's really interesting about the story. And I hope Jonathan Hickman will kind of write into that really fascinating aspect that he's already divulged within the construction of this plot here. Growing up reading Marvel Comics, I became fascinated by Doctor Doom and how he is potentially the center of the Marvel Universe, Green shared. He is one of my bucket list characters, and this story is somewhat a love letter to Doom and Marvel. Sanford and I have been waiting to work together for quite a while. So when he told me that he'd come up with an amazing Doom story and he wanted me to help out, I jumped at the chance. It's a giant sized Doom story about a giant sized character, and I can't tell you how excited I am to get to write Doom again. Jonathan is one of my longtime friends and amazes me with his vast knowledge of all types of things, especially the Marvel Universe. Green continued. I couldn't think of anyone better to collaborate with. Once again, we're taking a look at this beautiful cover, really depicting Doctor Doom in just so many disparate moments within his own life here. Looks like this series is set to go on sale May 15th over from Marvel Comics. Sadly, it looks like we don't have much information aside from that. It's just the fact that this series is referencing Secret Wars, I think, is what's making it so ominous for me. I'm wondering not only which ties to Fantastic Four this series has, but if there's anything that's going to be directly referencing Secret Wars lingering, just underneath the surface. Also, Sanford Green is just an incredible creator. Sanford Green's work on Bitterroot is nothing short of just absolutely phenomenal. I'd really encourage you to go check out the Bitterroot series if you haven't before, just to get a tease at what kind of artwork you can expect in the pages of Hickman and Green's Doom issue 1. I'm really, really excited for this book, and we will continue to cover it and talk about any new revelations that we'll see in the lead up to the series debut over in May. One final thing I want to say about this individual story before we move on is just a little bit of reactions towards Marvel's recent Thanos series with Christopher Cantwell. I was so excited for that book. I had so much hype for that series. I think that series has some really interesting art, but there's something about the execution that's lacking. So I really hope that this new Doom series is going to be able to have a stronger execution and really capture my interest a little bit more than that Thanos series has. Although I do really like how Marvel has been picking their artists for these really big stories, and I hope that they continue breaking barriers with artists like Sanford Green here. Okay, really interesting stuff over on Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Green's Doom #1. I feel like we had so much to talk about over with that book. We're going to head into a big block of not only Spider Man and Ultimate Comics titles in just one moment here. Okay, so there's some big stuff just on the horizon for Marvel's Ultimate Comics line. The publishers actually unveiled some upcoming solicits for brand new comics on sale over in May. It feels like sometimes on these streams we get to preview books that are just a couple months in the future. It looks like this stream is all about the month of May. Without further ado, let's go ahead and preview some brand new issues for upcoming Marvel Comics Ultimate series, including Ultimate Spider-Man, Black Panther, and X-Men. This one coming in from Marvel.com on February 9th. By now, fans are fully invested in Marvel's new Ultimate Universe. Carefully crafted and controlled by the maker as a world without superheroes, the new Ultimate Universe is now free from its shadowy origins, and its future is thrillingly unpredictable. This sentence is really what we're going to talk about ad nauseum in this article today. I'm going to take this sentence right now, copy it in my notes, and we are going to reference it a little bit later on in the stream today. Across multiple titles set in this new landscape, iconic heroes emerge, new conflicts erupt, and surprising relationships are forged. It's a fresh start for the Marvel mythos, and the biggest and boldest storytelling swings still lie ahead. Right now, get a sneak peek at what's to come with cover reveals for May's 3 Ultimate issues. Here, we found another really fantastic sentence that we are also going to be referencing later on within the stream too. I'm going to read it one more time. It's a fresh start for the Marvel mythos, and the biggest and boldest storytelling swings still lie ahead. Okay, so this is our first comic book issue of the Ultimate line for May. This is none other than Ultimate X-Men. It looks like this is the 3rd chapter of the series, once again coming in from Peach Momoko. I really have to say that in terms of Marvel's Ultimate line right now, Ultimate X-Men is the series that I am most anticipating. in large part because of the creative team, because of the fact that Peach Momoko is both writing and drawing this series. And I think the cast of characters introduced in this new series are really interesting as we're getting a look over at the Ultimate Armor, which looks to serve as our protagonist in the series. And we have this new character of Maystorm, who is also attending a school with Hisako Armor over in Japan. So many interesting things happening in this series. Let's learn about what additional plot threads Peach Momoko is bringing to Ultimate X-Men in the series' third issue on sale May 15th. Before we read the solicit, also, I think it's great that Peach Momoko was able to write and draw not one, not two, but three issues. That is phenomenal. Discover the mysterious May Storm's origin in Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men 3. Mei Igarashi was a regular girl until she discovered her unusual abilities and her hair changed from brown to white. Now learn how and why she came to mysterious how excuse me. Let's see if I can talk today. Now learn how and why she came to idolize a mysterious freedom fighter in Africa who also harnesses the power of the storm. Yeah, the idea that Peach Momoko is going to somehow, link up these plot threads over from Japan to Africa with like the characters of Maystorm, Hisako, and Storm is so fascinating. I feel like Peach Momoko is getting so ambitious. Only 3 issues in to her Ultimate X-Men comic. I am so stoked. I'm so highly anticipating what we have to see upcoming in this series. And I'm also really interested in the character of Armor. I think having Armor as your protagonist really sets Ultimate X-Men apart from so many of the comics in the main line right now. Also, the character of Maystorm is just a new character, and I feel like her connection to Storm makes her so interesting. It feels like over the past couple years, Storm has really kind of been bolstered in popularity by like various other media as well as Marvel's own comics. So the fact that they're capitalizing on such a big character with like a brand new sidekick that has these like mysterious ties back to her, so interesting in this book. Grayson Red says, I am so excited to see how she pulls this off. Totally agree. Grayson Red also says, cool to see the connection between Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Black Panther already. Yeah, no, you're totally right, because they're also going to be exploring Africa too. It'd be so cool if there was any tie back to like Storm and Wakanda. We actually see Storm over in Ultimate Black Panther too, so that's already a connection between Ultimate Black Panther and X-Men. Speaking of Ultimate Black Panther, let's go ahead and talk about the 4th issue of the series. This one features a pretty phenomenal cover. I am loving the like strained and really big facial expressions from artist Stefano Caselli. Once again here, this is the 4th issue written by Brian Hill. In Brian Hill and Stefano Caselli's Ultimate Black Panther 4, Shuri seizes the throne. With T'Challa missing and presumed dead, Wakanda needs a new leader. Shuri wants war against Ra and Khonshu more than T'Challa ever did, but at what cost? Meanwhile, Black Panther must learn from his new allies, the freedom fighters, Killmonger, and Storm. Okay, so I did not only want to talk about Ultimate Black Panther issue 4, but also about the debut of the series at large here. So Ultimate Black Panther 1 was written over from Brian Hill and also featured some really phenomenal and beautiful art from Stefano Caselli. We've been really anticipating and hyping up this book for a really long time. And I do think that one of the most interesting pieces within Ultimate Black Panther has to do with the characters of Khonshu and Ra. These two antagonists make up the character of the Ultimate Moon Knight, which seemingly launches a terrorist attack against Wakanda. It was really interesting to see T'Challa be able to respond to some of those threats and work together with not only his like wife, his queen Okoye, as well as Shuri and some of the other characters within the Dora Milaje. I think there's a lot of great aspects about the 1st issue of Ultimate Black Panther, but the fact that this series just read so familiar and there are so many characters that seem so similar to, characters that are featured prominently within the Black Panther films really like took me a second to just get a sense of deja vu within the book. I know we've been saying this kind of ad nauseum in terms of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, but I really want the publisher to like do anything they can to push the line forward and to make these books feel adventurous as the X-Men's Fall of X comic books have been. I mean, the fact that we had launches like Uncanny Spider-Man was just such a swing and a left turn for this series. In fact, I think Marvel's Ultimate Comics have also done this as well. I think putting Peach Momoko on Ultimate X-Men is definitely not the first creator you would have in mind for that series. Also, I think Ultimate Invasion was a tremendous comic book that switched protagonists and had so much ambition. I'm just a little bit worried, about the further state of Ultimate Black Panther. Frankly, there's a lot of other plot threads in this book that could really set it apart and make it as interesting as like Ultimate Invasion or I think that Ultimate Universe one shot. And that really has to do with Brian Hill exploring some of these antagonists. And I think what really makes T'Challa different from his main 616 universe counterpart. But that being said, though, I still think like a lot of the material and content in the issue itself is pretty good. In particular, I think the dialogue throughout that issue was super strong, and there's so many great expressions from the individual characters. So I don't feel comfortable saying that Ultimate Black Panther is a complete miss. But what I can like totally feel comfortable saying is that Marvel really needs to have more ambition in terms of their Ultimate comics. Otherwise, I'm just not sure what the point is of reading this line in general. AfroSF says, "Greetings, Arakko Braddock. I have been very honest in my dislike for most Marvel comics, but I am invested completely in all Ultimate Marvel comics. I have them all on pre-order." Okay, so AfroSF, I don't want to like turn you away from the Ultimate books because I do have a feeling that Ultimate Black Panther could improve in time. I'm also interested to see T'Challa go off against Khonshu and Ra as the Ultimate Moon Knight. I feel like Ultimate Spider-Man could easily pull it together and seem more unique if it builds upon its science fiction-based threat. But I am definitely looking at these comics to have just a greater sense of ambition moving forward. One thing that I keep meaning to say about Ultimate Black Panther, but I keep getting my train of thought lost, is that this book at least has some interesting characters with Killmonger. It also has the character of Storm. And then also in some of the future solicits for other covers, we saw that the Maker was showing up. So even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the first issue, I'm still going to stick with Ultimate Black Panther. I still think Brian Hill's a great writer. I still think Stefano Caselli's a great artist. And I am hoping that they are going to just do something different in some upcoming issues here. Hey, let's go ahead and head into Ultimate Spider-Man. I also have quite a lot to say about this that I think is going to be really interesting. This is the 5th issue of the comic book series. I think this is just an absolutely wonderful cover from Marco Cicchetto. One thing I really like about this cover for me is that it really pushes on some of the elements that makes Ultimate Spider-Man different from what you've seen in the main series. We have like the new Harry, as well as the character of Ben within the background too. The one thing about this cover that kind of irks me the wrong way that we're going to be talking about ad nauseum is Harry's mysterious goblin-based past that really seemingly puts Ultimate Spider-Man in a really like cliched direction here. Let's go ahead and read a little bit more about this series. One thing I want to mention is that it looks like David Messina is on the art as opposed to regular series artist Marco Cicchetto. In Ultimate Spider-Man 5, Jonathan Hickman digs into the secret history of Harry Osborn. How does the heir apparent of Oscorp become a masked vigilante? And what does Green Goblin know of the true status of the world he lives in? Ultimate Spider-Man 4 and in Ultimate Spider-Man 4 and 5, Hickman will be joined by acclaimed artist David Messina with regular series artist Marco Cicchetto returning in June's Ultimate Spider-Man issue 6. Can't say I'm super familiar with David Messina as an artist. I actually really appreciate how this solicit is teasing the fact that Marco Cicchetto's returning to the comic book in June. I wonder if Ultimate Spider-Man issue 6 is going to be a really big issue, maybe kicking off the second big arc of the core series. Once again here, I think the commentary that we have is very similar to Ultimate Black Panther. The fact that this book is re-exploring Harry Osborn's past as Green Goblin is just not that interesting and like ambitious direction that I want Ultimate Spider-Man to go down here. The fact that we're almost half a dozen issues into the run and still exploring story ideas like that has me really, really worried about not only the book, but the line in general. I still think, and I wonder if it's copium at this point, if Marvel is going to be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat and continue to build on those science fiction concepts, or with the overall premise of the Ultimate Universe be that the Maker caused everything to really spin in some interesting directions. Yeah, I am not sure where these comic books are headed, but right now I feel like some of these books are just a little bit too derivative, and I'd love to see Marvel take just a couple more chances. I told you that at the towards the end of this article we would reference those two sentences we read during Marvel's first paragraph. They wrote the biggest and boldest storytelling swings still lie ahead when referencing the Ultimate Universe. I'm really hoping that's true. They also wrote the new Ultimate Universe is now free from its shadowy origins and its future is thrillingly unpredictable. If the future is thrillingly unpredictable, then why is T'Challa still located within Wakanda? In fact, why is T'Challa the Black Panther in general for Marvel's brand new Ultimate Comics line? I think it'd be so cool if you made like Shuri or somebody else the Black Panther in order to drive the intrigue for the series. I feel largely the same way about Ultimate Spider Man. I have no idea why Marvel decided to launch a series with Peter Parker as its protagonist and somehow claim that the book is subversive. A Pilgrim says David Messina worked on Star Wars comics. Yeah, great call out for that, A Pilgrim. Let me know if you have any familiarity with some of Messina's work. Okay, fantastic. So that was everything we have to say about the future of the Ultimate Universe. But today we actually got a brand new Ultimate story that I think is quite fascinating here. Excuse me, this one also came in yesterday on February 9th, coming in directly from David Brooke. I think this article is so fascinating. It looks like it was revealed that Chip Zdarsky was actually the first choice to write Marvel Comics' Ultimate Spider-Man series. Chip Zdarsky revealed he turned down the Ultimate Spider-Man writing gig. This one is coming in from David Brooke. Over on Adventures in Poor Taste, Chip Zdarsky revealed on the Off-Panel podcast he was the first pick to write Ultimate Spider-Man. The fact is he turned it down, and for good reason. The funny, weird secret is that I was offered Ultimate Spider-Man, Zdarsky said. Couple reasons why I didn't take it. One, I was doing Batman, but two, because the whole idea that was pitched, I got to read all the Ultimate Universe stuff that Hickman had already written, and he had the plan for other books and stuff. I just read it and was like, oh, this is so Hickman. Hickman should be writing this. Pointing out Hickman has never written Spider-Man, Zdarsky admitted selfishly, I wanted to write it. I wanted to be that guy with Marco on a Spider-Man book. Like, obviously. But when I was reading that outline, I was like, it's gotta be Hickman. He went on to try and say, he went on to say anyone trying to write for Ultimate Spider-Man pitch would be trying to write like Hickman. He said months later he had a call with Hickman, and in that call, Hickman thanked Zdarsky for turning the pitch down because he was having so much fun writing it. I think fans can agree Ultimate Spider-Man 1 is proof enough that Hickman is the right guy for the job. As I said in my review, Ultimate Spider-Man is like a warm blanket to the reader who wants to see Peter Parker have a great possible future. I really disagree with a lot of the sentiments that are shared within the article, and I'm really not sure that Chip Zdarsky would have been the best choice for Ultimate Spider-Man as a comic book series. It seems like Ultimate Spider-Man right now is having a little bit of trouble balancing the cliched elements within the character interactions, and I feel like in reading some of Chip Zdarsky's Batman, I see those same elements come up. So I'm wondering if we would need somebody who is like more strong at writing dialogue pieces in order for Ultimate Spider-Man to feel a little bit less cohesive and a little bit less cliched with how it comes off as a series. There are so many other creators that immediately come to mind over at Marvel. I would love to see like Gail Simone tackle the book. I would have loved to see James Tynion, any of the X-Men writers. I would have loved to see tackle some of these comics too. Also, Chip Zdarsky as a creator is just so busy between Marvel and DC Comics. It feels like he may not have the bandwidth for this really, really big series. Afro SF says, no, no, no. I want T'Challa as Ultimate Panther. I like that Wakanda is in the same position that it was in Fantastic Four 52 in the 616 universe. It will be exciting when they reveal themselves. You know, Afro SF, I think that we ultimately probably have a big difference of opinion on like where Marvel's line should be going, and that's completely fine. You know, for me, I really want to see the publisher take like as many swings as possible, and I really want to see them like stick to those really big story decisions. Like for instance, one comic book that has just been like blowing my mind almost each and every month has been Marvel's Venom series, and really in the way that it's managed to like subvert all those existing characters and bring them into like new status quos and new positions. I'm talking specifically about Natasha Romanoff. I feel like giving her the symbiote has made her a super interesting character. And Marvel's X-Men line, I think making Kamala Khan in X-Men has made her a super, super interesting individual character too. And I feel like Marvel maybe isn't moving in that direction enough in terms of their Ultimate comics. But I love the fact that there's a little bit of healthy disagreement over on the channel. I'd love to hear if anybody else disagrees and thinks that, T'Challa should be the Ultimate Black Panther in that book. Let me know down in the comments. You know, one thing that is really like actually heading to the surface of my mind here as we discuss Ultimate Black Panther is, man, I would have loved to see like Storm or May Storm become the Ultimate Black Panther. I think that would have been so fascinating here. Ultimately, too, one thing I would say, like, my greatest fear of Marvel Comics in general is them just totally like switching everything back to the status quo of where things were in like the 60s and 70s. Because I feel like those are the single most boring stories that we can get from the publisher. And the fact that we're in like these like fifth, sixth, seventh generation Marvel Comics series with books like Carnage pitting like Flash Thompson against Cletus Cassidy is what has me interested in the line in general. But super interesting discussion. I love having these kinds of talks here. Okay, it looks like we have a preview. So right now, Ultimate Spider-Man feels like it's a couple years in the past of Marvel's own continuity. Thankfully, I actually don't feel the same way about Marvel's core Spider-Man series. Marvel's core Spider-Man series has really been investing into the plot of its individual characters, especially within its supporting characters. We not only get some new developments from Randy Robertson, but also Robbie Robertson is well within the scope of the issue. The gang war has been breaking out across the Amazing Spider-Man, and it just continues to rope in so many of the supporting cast members. Watching Janice Lincoln slowly pick the mantle of the Beetle back up across the gang war has been so epic. And now at this stage within the series, it looks like Madam Mask and the Beetle are having their final epic brawl between two different factions within the conflict. Let's go ahead and see what Newsarama has in store for Amazing Spider-Man 43. First of all, let's see who actually wrote this article, though. Looks like it came in over from Will Salmon. The Gang War crossover has brought chaos and carnage, though not carnage, to New York as a multitude of villains do battle for supremacy in the city streets. It's reaching its climax in March, but before that, things are going to get bloody. We've got an exclusive preview of next week's Amazing Spider-Man 43 Below, which promises to be one heck of a battle as the rival forces square up against each other in Central Park. More importantly for Peter, however, is one of his allies has been taken off the board. His best friend Randy Robertson was gunned down in the Amazing Spider-Man Gang War First Strike one-shot, taking a bullet to protect Jenny Slinkin from an assassination attempt. Randy has been hospitalized ever since, but in this preview, you'll see Spider-Man make a solemn vow to end the gang war for good so that he can return to Randy's side and wait for him to recover. Yeah, it feels like as Amazing Spider-Man has developed, the character of Randy Robertson has just been so core to Peter Parker's life. Zeb Wells continues to introduce Randy and like all these individual like different pieces of like context throughout the series, which has been, I think, one of my favorite parts about the gang war Just once again, the way that Zeb Wells has like recontextualized characters like Janice Lincoln in new roles throughout this series has made Amazing Spider-Man feel like the most interesting cat and mouse game that I've seen within Marvel's publishing line. The Gang War has also introduced some pretty solid artwork from John Romita Jr. There's just really a great sense of movement between, Spider-Man gently holding, Randy's arm within the scope of the issue. There's also some pretty solid reaction shots in the fourth, fifth, and sixth panels on the page as well. This page is just a great juxtaposition between Randy and Robbie's kind of really depressing hospital visit versus this big battle that Spider-Man is about to embark on between Madame Mask and the Beetle here. One interesting element about this issue of Spider-Man is that it reunites Peter over with his Gang War team of characters. Peter and the She-Hulk have really gone on so many interesting adventures throughout this series. I'm so happy that she has an interesting line of dialogue here, teasing the next scope and next battle for the Amazing Spider-Man. Plus, having Tombstone is also a really important element of the book that's captured really well from John Romita Jr.'s art. Frankly, this is one of the best pages of John Romita Jr.'s art that I've probably seen on Amazing Spider-Man to date. It just captures so many interesting parts of his artwork in really interesting ways. So here is our final page within the scope of this preview. This is a really interesting one as it sets up the massive fights with Madame Mask and Beetle in Central Park within New York. We've had so many comic books individually teasing the fact that these two factions were going to head to war against each other. One of my favorite parts also about the Gang War is the fact that we slowly got to see Madame Mask rise up and become almost as powerful as Janice Lincoln, or seemingly more powerful within the final page. Also, the way that Zeb Wells has been managing the supporting cast, not only on Janice Lincoln, but also Madame Mask's side, has been great. There's been just so many fun appearances with, these female supervillain characters following Janice, not only in this issue, but in issues dating back all the way to like 31 within Spider-Man. Also, these characters of like Count Nefaria and Madame Mask have also gotten just really, really phenomenal character moments within the book. Let's go ahead and read Marvel's synopsis for the issue, and then we will move over to our next story. The final fight of Gang War starts here. The biggest and most brutal battle in Spider-Man history starts now. So batten your hatches. If you think you knew what Madame Mask or Hobgoblin or Beetle or Diamondback was capable of, think again. After this, there are just 2 more issues of the Gang War arc in the core Amazing Spider-Man book. Though the Miles Morales Spider-Man and the Daredevil, Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, and Deadly Hands of Kung Fu miniseries will all continue throughout February and March, Amazing Spider-Man 43 is published by Marvel on February 14th. I think just throughout the Gang War storyline, I haven't really been super excited to pick up each and every issue of the book like I have in the past, but I would say every time I do, I always find just some really interesting interaction or just a great element of plot that always sucks me back into the narrative. Also, I think as soon as this storyline wraps up, The Amazing Spider-Man is going to turn into more of the book that I want to see again, as we've already been teasing the characters of Chasm and Hollow's Eve returning to the series in the very, very near future. There is so much fun stuff in store over for Marvel's core Spider-Man book, and I'm still really happy with the Gang War. I think this book is in a super good place. If you take this book right now and compare it to Ultimate Spider-Man, I think Marvel's main Amazing Spider-Man series is the winner, just absolutely bar none. Okay, we should have covered this earlier, but it looks like I kind of fell out of sequence a little bit. It looks like we still have some Ultimate Marvel coverage to talk about, and frankly, I'm still interested in talking about it. It looks like we have a cover over for Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man issue 3, teasing a new costume over for Ultimate Bullseye. This one is really interesting also because there was some recent casting that Bullseye was also set to return to Marvel's Daredevil Born Again series that's currently in production from Disney Plus. So, really cool bit of synergy here, opening up an interesting plot element. Also, it is a little bit subversive to have Bullseye in a Spider Man story over with Green Goblin. I think that is one pretty solid element here coming in from Marvel. Also, big thank you to David Brooke and Adventures in Poor Taste for posting all these articles just so fast. Thanks to artist Marco Cicchetto for sharing on his Twitter, we've got a first look at Ultimate Bullseye and the reveal of the Ultimate Spider Man 3 cover. Written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Cicchetto, this version of Ultimate Bullseye appears to have a helmet with blue, glowing eyes. Marvel Comics has got a hit on his hands with its Ultimate Universe line, with Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate Spider Man selling out. So one might assume Ultimate Spider Man 3 will sell out too, given the fact that it's introducing new mainline villains so early. We already know Shocker is coming up in issue 2, so it's safe to say each issue will have new looks for classic villains. Jonathan Hickman has worked his magic. You know what? We are going to take this sentence and we are going to reference it later on within the scope of the article. All right, let's continue reading this one. Jonathan Hickman has worked his magic with the X-Men, and now he's rebooting the Ultimate Universe, and it's very much working. At the start of Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker is in his late 30s, doesn't have powers, and is happily married to Mary Jane with 2 healthy kids. It's the dream scenario for Peter Parker until he misses what his life has been missing all along. Man, this is a tremendous cover from Marco Cicchetto over on Ultimate Spider-Man 3. It feels like this is really ambitious for Cicchetto's line. I think the way that these characters are posed teases just a lot of interesting and complicated feelings within the scope of this tale. Now, one thing that has me a little bit worried about the future of Ultimate Spider-Man was this sentence that we read over in this article here. We already know Shocker is coming up in issue 2. It's safe to say that each issue will have new looks for classic villains. So right now, it feels like I'm having a little bit of Spider-Man burnout. And I think the last thing that anybody wants to hear who's embarking on a sense of Spider-Man burnout is the fact that Marvel is kind of dusting off new looks for older villains. There has to be some other reason to introduce new looks for these classic characters. And I hope Ultimate Spider-Man is more than just like a retro-based, nostalgia piece to what, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko were working on within the course of their first run. But still, this is a really tremendous cover and a really wonderful new outfit over for Bullseye. This is an article that I want to touch on super briefly. It looks like this is our last story pertaining to the Ultimate Universe that we're going to talk about today. This one is a brand new RB Silva cover for an upcoming Ultimate Black Panther issue. For me, this one is really interesting because of all the interesting plot threads it references over on the book. We have the characters of Khonshu and Ra towards the bottom of the page. Also Okoye and Shuri, Ultimate Black Panther, Killmonger, and Storm. So I think this cover is just a great reminder to me that Ultimate Black Panther is worthy of my attention, even if it isn't serving like the genre or the exact subject matter like I want it to. This book already has an interesting scope that it's revealed within the course of the first chapter, and I'm still excited to see where some of these plot threads are going, particularly with some of the connections between Ultimate Storm and Maystorm over in Ultimate X-Men. And frankly, I'm always a sucker for these really epic collage sequences. RB Silva is just wonderful at capturing all these disparate expressions for some of these characters too. Okay, we have some big Marvel previews to go ahead and cover today. So, Marvel's latest Scarlet Witch series ended quite abruptly for me. So, it's really cool that pretty much the same creative team of Steve Orlando and Lorenzo Tometa, who worked with Sarah Pichelli on the first Scarlet Witch series, are reteaming for a comic book centered not only on Scarlet Witch, but the character of Quicksilver. So, Wanda and Pietro have so much familiarity with each other as siblings, but one thing that I'm really worried about in terms of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch is just the fact that I don't know how you keep some of the plot threads within Wanda's own like limited Scarlet Witch series going, and introduce Quicksilver and still make the book feel cohesive as a storyline. So let's go ahead and explore a little bit about what Steve Orlando and Lorenzo Tometa are bringing to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. An ominous message is sent to two Avengers in an exclusive preview of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's new series. One of the many announcements to come out of New York Comic Con was the reveal of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, a new limited series celebrating the duo's 60th anniversary. The comic is a continuation of Orlando and Tometa's run on Scarlet Witch, with the creators adding Wanda Maximoff's twin brother Pietro to the mix. New secrets of their legacy will be uncovered, but a look at the first issue shows that their adopted father, Magneto, looms large over the proceedings. Comicbook.com has an exclusive preview of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver 1 by Steve Orlando, Lorenzo Tometa, Frank William, and VC's Ariana Mayer. It begins with the siblings teaming up to stop a Skypiercer spacecraft from hurtling toward Lotkil. To give you some more context here, Wanda is currently operating her magic shop, the Emporium, out of Lotkil, and the Emporium also has a mysterious door known as the Last Door, which creatures who need Wanda's help mysteriously stumble out of in the comic book. Darcy Lewis, who some may remember from Kat Dennings' portrayal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, brings Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver a sealed box. Darcy Lewis is one of the few characters to transfer from the MCU to the Marvel Universe. Quicksilver quickly realizes the penmanship on the box to be from Magneto, who they believe is dead but is currently brought back to life in the resurrection of Magneto. Wanda casts a spell to open the box, but the preview ends before we find out what Magneto has left for them inside. So what is Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver about? The description reads, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver has been heroes, friends, family heads, and occasionally villains. But above all, they are twins who look out for each other. So, when Wanda receives a letter from the recently deceased Magneto that would upset Pietro, she burns the letter before her brother can read it. But her choices drive them apart at the worst possible time. A new threat heralded by the wizard with the horrifying Eldritch upgrade is coming for their heads. And if they can't find a way to repair their damaged bond, it will cost them their lives. We've been doing so much work with Wanda, and we wanted to spotlight the diversity of her powers and the dynamic things she can do. And it's really exciting to do the same and give the same love to Pietro during the 60th anniversary, Steve Orlando said of the series when it was announced. But it's not just about his powers. It's about who he is and bringing him back into this chosen family narrative we're doing. So you won't just see Pietro back in his book. You'll see Pietro with members of the extended Maximoff family that hasn't gotten a ton of time to spend with before. Russell Dauterman's cover on Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver is just super phenomenal. Dauterman is one of my absolute favorite artists at Marvel Comics here. I think this cover is a great depiction as to why in this comic book. We even got to see Dauterman draw a main issue of the Scarlet Witch series that was just absolutely tremendous too. Scarlet Witch always has a great sense of design here. Let's go ahead and give just the designers of this individual issue a quick shout out here. Recap art from Luciano Vecchio, logo design from Stacy Zucker, and the production design from Kat Gregorowitz. Once again here, though, this one written by Orlando, featuring art from Tometa, colors from Frank Williams, and letters from VC's Ariana Mayer. So here we go in our first preview page of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. We get a look at Wanda miles above Lotkil, taking a look at this Skypiercer station within the scope of this issue. Also really like how Wanda's light trails are showing up across so many disparate comic books, and think that Lorenzo Tometa's art is just so beautiful and so boldly expressive. On the second page, we kind of get caught up with Wanda's shopkeeper, Darcy Lewis, who we also talked about a little bit earlier, that's recently been imported over from the MCU. Darcy has felt right at home with Wanda over in the Emporium at the Magic Shop, and also adds this really interesting element of continuity. Actually, I meant to say comedy towards the comic book art too. A Pilgrim says, nice art, cannot agree with you more here. Also, fantastic to get caught up with Quicksilver within the scope of this one too. There are really interesting page designs from Lorenzo Tometa across this series. Once again, the way that Tometa is able to depict Quicksilver's powers with all these like flashing pieces of him while he's running, super fascinating over in this particular chapter. Thankfully, though, towards this next page, Darcy actually brings Pietro and Wanda this interesting, piece or box that we read about from the solicit that was seemingly given to them from Magneto. So Quicksilver is really drawn towards this mysterious box and quickly identifies the penmanship to be none other than Magneto himself over on this panel here. And then on the next page, our team is trying to furiously open up this box and figure out what's inside. Looks like towards these last couple panels here, Wanda finally is able to figure out that within the box there's a mysterious note coming in from Magneto. Quicksilver says, it's open and no longer my problem. A letter. You don't care what it says? Magneto is dead, Wanda. I've got no need for his absentee opinions. So throughout Marvel Comics continuity, Quicksilver has always been a jerk. Once again, seeing him kind of dash Wanda's hopes within the final panel of this first preview of the issue is just fantastic. And I just think a strong element of characterization here from Orlando. One really interesting thing to note about this series that, once again, we've already read from this preview is the fact that Resurrection of Magneto is currently in full swing. When I actually compare Resurrection of Magneto to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, I'm a little bit interested that Wanda isn't the person that got the vision to resurrect Magneto, but it was actually Storm herself within some of these pages. So I think that's a really interesting choice for Marvel to go on, because I could have easily seen Steve Orlando writing the Resurrection of Magneto with Wanda as the centerpiece of that series. That being said, though, I am interested with how Steve Orlando is going to connect the Resurrection of Magneto to this main Quicksilver series. I really hope there's a lot of connections and a way to just bring Scarlet Witch a little bit closer towards where the X-Men are headed within the next relaunch here. And once again, I think the expressive art from Lorenzo Tometa is really epic. It's also really fascinating to see Tometa break off from previous collaborator Sarah Pichelli and just kind of go off in her own direction as an artist. I am very excited about this upcoming launch here. One piece of criticism that I can kind of apply towards the main Scarlet Witch series is that I don't think Steve Orlando had enough plot to fill out as many issues as he wrote. I wonder if this is more of an issue with Marvel's editorial or the individual outline for the Scarlet Witch book. Also, I think one really interesting piece of Scarlet Witch that has been such like a core element to the comic book is the character of Magneto. Like halfway through the Scarlet Witch book, we thought Magneto came back to life, but found out that it was actually Magneto's clone known as Joseph. So the end of the main Scarlet Witch book has pulled on all these plot threads with Joseph, and having Magneto introduced back into the series now should have some really strong emotional underpinnings and should create a great sense of subtext for this series. Really interested with where Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver is headed, and we will have some more coverage when this series is released here. Let's see if we can find a release date on this article, and then we'll move on to our next story. Let's see. I'm going to find our release date on Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and I'll be right back. Okay, this one is set to release, wow, this Wednesday, February 14th, according to Marvel Comics here. All right, there's a lot to be excited for, I guess, next week at Marvel. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, and I'll be back in just a moment. But really glad to hear, MTLNS, that you enjoyed Ultimate Black Panther. I love hearing like different opinions from everybody. I will take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few moments. Thanks for sticking with me. Thank you so much for sticking with me. So good to have you aboard here. We still have a really big X-Men preview to go ahead and talk about. This is Fall of the House of X2, one of the two dual miniseries that is set to close out the Krakoan Age alongside Rise of the Powers of 10. Let's go ahead and see how Polaris is able to stage her assault against the villainous Orcus in the pages of the really epic X-Men miniseries. This one is also really exciting because we have epic writing from Jerry Duggan and just phenomenal artwork from one of my favorite Marvel Comics artists, Lucas Werneck. Also, it looks like Fall of the House of X issue 2 is coming on sale this Wednesday. So, frankly, there's a lot of books happening right now at Marvel. Let's learn a little bit about this brand new preview for the issue coming in from Brian Cronin, one of my favorite writers on CBR.com. The fall of X has been devastating on the world of the mutants, but in the fall of the House of X2, the mutants launched their most significant counteroffensive on the evil anti-mutant organization Orcus, with a devastating assault on Orcus's space station headquartered the Bloom, led by Polaris with help from the Brood. In the CBR exclusive preview of next week's Fall of the House of X issue 2. I feel like there were so many scenarios in the first issue of Fall of the House of X where it looked like the X-Men were kind of down on their luck. But all of a sudden, on the very last page, we got to see Polaris rise up over with the Brood and strike that massive assault. Really watching our X-Men finally get some good fortune amidst their Fall of X, I think, is going to be a great story scenario. Let's see what else Duggan, Werneck, colorist Brian Valenza, and letterer Travis Lanham have in store for this one. It continues the events of the miniseries' first issue, where the X-Men finally declared war for Earth. During last year's Hellfire Gala, let's see, Orcus drove the mutants underground due to blackmail over being able to kill any human who used the Krakoan medicine produced by Krakoa. But now, with Cyclops found guilty of crimes against humanity, the X-Men started to fight back, launching their attack from the underground. However, they also have an asset in outer space, as Polaris is prepared to make her move as well. Really incredible cover coming in from Pepe Larraz over on Fall of the House of X issue 2. Let's go ahead and talk about the interior pages for the issue as well. Really like how this one opens, centered around this mysterious Orcus space station, with so many of our members discussing some recent developments in terms of Marvel Comics continuity here. Also, like the reference to Fei Long and what's going on in terms of Invincible Iron Man. Jerry Duggan is writing both series, so it's really easy to connect some of those plot threads within his individual books. Plus, on this next page, we get to see some of our villains from Orcus reacting to Polaris's really epic counteroffensive that she staged along with the Brood characters here. Watching members of Orcus directly vocalize words like "Oh my God" is super cathartic for me as a reader. Also, just seeing some of Dr. Stasis and Modoc's reactions within the background is so much fun here. Random Rhyme says that Big Skull is full of pinata candy, right? It's gotta be, but it's probably not candy that you want to eat because Orcus has embedded a kill switch within it. Do not eat that candy, Random Rhyme. All right, and then we have Polaris's massive assault on the Bloom captured in full scope here. Such beautiful pages coming in from Lucas Werneck with this sense of design. There's also just a striking amount of detail on each individual panel here too. We've seen the Brood utilized as a villain before, so the fact that we're still seeing this really violent and like deadly Marvel Universe antagonist utilized as a force for good for the X-Men, super cathartic, such a great page, teasing the issue as a whole. I think this is a wonderful preview for Fall of the House of X. I want to read these captions here just to maybe extend the content and to see what else this creative team has in store. Polaris could have destroyed the station, but she risked losing the bulk of the fascist Orcus agents to the escape pods. She helped the crippled station in orbit and let the Brood off the leash. Yep, so interested to see where Fall of the House of X issue 2 picks up with characters like Cyclops and Shadowcat that were teased over in the first issue. Also excited to see what's going on over with Krakoa too. Not without a fight. The X-Men may be at their lowest point and they may be on the brink of complete eradication, but they are not going down without a fight. Polaris returns to guide the X-Men home, bringing a wicked surprise for Orcus. This epic tale split in two continues as the Krakoan age nears its conclusion. Give me one moment here. Jean Grey and the X-Men help save a group of Brood, and they are currently living on a celestial skull led by the former X-Men student known as Brew. At the end of the Fall of the House of X issue 1, Polaris embraced her heritage as Magneto's daughter by coming to Brew with her new Magneto-inspired costume and asking for his and the Brood's help in the war on Orcus. Brew agreed, which brings us to the second issue of the historic miniseries. In the preview pages for Fall of the House of X2, Polaris uses the Celestial Head to break through the defenses of the Orcus's space headquarters. That was bad enough for Orcus, but when Polaris invaded their headquarters, the Orcus soldiers believed that she was there to free any mutant prisoners held on the station. In reality, she was there to keep anyone from escaping the Bloom. She didn't want to destroy the headquarters, she wanted to kill as many Orcus soldiers as possible, so Lorna unleashed the army of Brood on the Orcus agents, horrifically slaughtering them all. We shall see how Orcus responds to this brutal attack next week. Yeah, super hyped to see the X-Men finally stage a somewhat successful, mass killing of Orcus agents. If you're just taking a step back and wondering why the X-Men are being so violent, it's probably because Orcus recently took a whole bunch of their X-Men off the board during the Hellfire Gala. Yeah, really cool preview of this issue, and I cannot wait to see how Orcus responds to the X-Men just absolutely one-upping them and unleashing the Brood to just completely wreck them. So really great stuff over from the X-Men. Super excited for Fall of the House of X2. Please look forward to some additional coverage on that book in the very near future. Why don't we go ahead and touch on a news story that I am super excited about? Sadly, we don't have that much coverage for this one, but oh boy, is this one of my most anticipated upcoming Marvel stories. It's Symbiosis Necrosis, the new story that's bringing together elements of not only Carnage, but Venom too. We have a cover coming in from Ken Lashley, a comic book artist who I've enjoyed for a very, very long time. The family that stays together gets slayed together. Starting next month, enjoy a symbiote bloodbath for the ages as Marvel's two ongoing titles, Venom and Carnage, play host to a vicious new saga, Symbiosis Necrosis. The four-part crossover will unfold across Venom 31 and 32 and Carnage 5 to 6. Today, fans can see all the major players on superstar artist Ken Lashley's all-new connecting cover, gracing all four issues of the crossover. The epic piece spotlights Venom Eddie Brock in his new look, Venom Dylan Brock Carnage, and the twisted Eddie Brock variant currently tormenting the Brock family Meridius. So many of the plot threads in Marvel's Venom book are working so well right now. Oh, give me one moment. I thought that was going to work, but it didn't. Let's see. Okay, that's going to work just fine. Yeah, so here is Ken Lashley's connecting variant cover. I just wanted to say very, very fast that to me it feels like so many of the plot threads in Venom's main book right now are spinning in a great direction. We've talked about this previously on the stream, so I'm going to try and keep it a little bit brief here. But the way that the Venom book has plunged Eddie Brock's life into the sci-fi world and has connected him with like displaced versions of himself like Meridius has been so thrilling. Also, just watching a Carnage battle against Flash Thompson as the anti-Venom in the pages of the main Carnage series has been nothing short of a tremendous. also, in addition, Venom is also taking on another plot thread with Eddie Brock's son Dylan also taking on a symbiote of his very own and teaming up with Black Widow. Interestingly enough, Black Widow, she recently got a symbiote, but isn't featured on the artwork over for Symbiosis Necrosis. I wonder if she's going to be in this storyline. Written by current Venom and Carnage scribe Toron Grönbeck and Al Ewing and drawn by Ken Lashley and Pere Perez, Symbiosis Necrosis will deliver an action-packed, visceral family drama that kicks off when Carnage, fresh off his latest slaughter spree in Death of the Venomverse, targets Eddie Brock. And how better to get his mortal enemy than going after Eddie's son and fellow Venom, Dylan. So there you go. Looks like Carnage has his sights set over on the character of Dylan. I think we learned that last stream when we were looking over some of the elements of Symbiosis Necrosis as well. The Venom father-son pair are currently on interwoven journeys across space and time in the pages of Venom. But their paths will collide dramatically when Dylan faces off against Cletus for the first time. The crossover will be packed with explosive developments, including a new look for Carnage, a powered-up Dylan, a shocking twist to Cletus and Carnage's bond, and an epic showdown with the only symbiote Carnage truly fears, Anti-Venom. Discussing this series with host Angelique Roque on This Week in Marvel, Grönbeck says, if Dylan sees the full extent of what Venom does in this world, it might not be great. And Carnage, being as sadist as he is, doesn't want to just kill Dylan. He wants Dylan to be aware of everything that Venom has done and turns into a sort of spectacular thing. And then it sort of takes a turn, and I'm not going to say what kind of turn, but it doesn't go the way that you think it will. One interesting thing about Symbiosis Necrosis that I really want to spotlight here is how the storyline is featuring, that really epic confrontation between Carnage and Flash that has been teased across so many disparate issues of the book. Also, I just want to take a few moments to reference the fact that Toron Grönbeck is a fantastic writer and continues to write more and more stories that I find myself interested in, whether it be Realm of X, the Carnage book, or just several other really fantastic series at Marvel. All right, that was our fast coverage on Symbiosis Necrosis here. Let's see what else we have in store. Okay, so here's a storyline that we should definitely spotlight over on the stream here. It looks like we have a brand new comic book issue over for not only Jackpot, but Mary Jane as well. Here is Jackpot and Black Cat #1, a first look coming in from Marvel Comics. Mary Jane interrupts Felicia Hardy's latest job in Jackpot and Black Cat #1 first look. In a special first look at Jackpot and Black Cat, Felicia casually commits a casino heist, only to run into New York's newest superhero, Mary Jane Watson. Face it, Felicia, you just got hit by the jackpot. So Jackpot and Black Cat issue 1. This article is actually written coming in from Megan Demore here. In Celeste Bronfman and Emilio Lyso's Jackpot and Black Cat 1, Mary Jane Watson and Felicia Hardy will strike out on a brand new team-up. When a classic Spider-Man villain starts to blackmail Felicia into a blatant and very public crime spree, Mary Jane steps in. But this time she'll come in swinging with her very own set of superpowers. Together, this dynamic duo will unravel the mystery behind Felicia's predicament as well as the history that brought all of them together. A special first look at Jackpot and Black Cat 1 shows Mary Jane whizzing through the air in her special Jackpot costume while Felicia goes on a stroll through a casino packed with supervillains and other shady figures. After picking the pocket of a bodyguard, Felicia finally checks her phone in one page, only to take off with several large bags of cash in another. Finally, Felicia makes it back to her getaway vehicle and finds Mary Jane parked there as well. A Pilgrim says, that actually looks pretty good in black and white or as manga. Oh my, you are right. You are right. I'm just taking a step back and realizing that as well. I've really enjoyed Emilio Lyso's work. I feel like not enough people are talking about Lyso as an artist. Like, check out the amount of detail here in this panel with Felicia. Another aspect that is really helping the art on this one too, um, let's see here, is just the fact that the facial expressions are so solid, and there's this just great layout juxtaposing Felicia and Mary Jane on the page here. Yeah, and I just don't think the first issue's cover is as good as what some of the interior art has in this book. Okay, so here's another page coming in from Lyso. There's a really great sense of manga influence on the page here. Once again, think this layout is really cool as the first panel is like an establishing shot of New York. And then we can see Felicia engage in like all this subterfuge and steal something from the character, which is highlighted from this ominous circle. I think this is like one of the techniques that was introduced in like Marvel Comics Hawkeye series with Matt Fraction and David Aja. So love to see some of these techniques employed on a Spider-Man series centered around the supporting cast. Once again, here's another look over at Felicia. I like the cat motifs with Felicia and the fact that she's got this a cat phone case here in the middle of her, like stealing a lot, like a significant portion of money. Love the fact that Felicia always has this really interesting sense of humor in some of the gadgets that she employs throughout this series. So it looks like this is our last preview page for the issue. It looks like we see Felicia escaping from her night of crime while running into the character of Jackpot in a really interesting way, with Jackpot like crashing into the windshield of her space cruiser. Man, I just want to take a few moments and say here that once again, this Emilio Lyso artwork is so beautiful. There's so much detail, so much expressions with the interactions of the various characters, and it's just very clear and very easy to see what's going on in the page. If nothing else, I cannot recommend Jackpot and Black Cat enough just based on some of the art. I think this cover from Pablo Villalobos is a little bit too realistic and kind of detracts from what this series is all about in the first place. So, very interested in checking out this Jackpot and Black Cat series. To be honest, I wish these characters had like a core ongoing series written by Jed MacKay. I really loved Jed MacKay's Mary Jane series that also featured Black Cat during the midst of Dark Web, and I don't feel like I've been able to read a Mary Jane that's been written that strongly since. Hopefully, this Jackpot and Black Cat series will kind of buck that trend, and I'll find a new way to get acclimated towards Mary Jane as a character in the Marvel Universe. Okay, we're just going to take a quick glimpse at an upcoming foil variant cover for Blood Hunt coming in from Javier Fernandez. Javier Fernandez, just a wonderful artist at Marvel. This variant cover was recently released over at the publisher. While I'm not super stoked about checking out Blood Hunt, just because I feel like Marvel hasn't sewed in enough plot threads towards their core universe for me to really get invested in this story, I still think the Pepe Larraz art in the main series is going to be beautiful, and I'm interested to see if Jed MacKay is going to be able to pull it together. Even though I have absolutely no hype for this upcoming story. Um, so it looks like we have our Marvel characters captured in their like most current costumes. We really have Spider-Man and Thor in a very like back to basics approach at Marvel, as well as Vision too. But I do really love Wanda's new costume featured prominently in her own previous series, as well as the comic book limited series with Quicksilver too. So, not a whole lot to say about Blood Hunt aside from the fact that the creative team is just phenomenal, and I love this gorgeous Javier Fernandez cover. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into our final news article. Oh, here, Leonard McFarlane says, "Didn't you say there are too many Spider-Man books? I feel the same about Venom and Carnage." So I feel a little different about Venom and Carnage. I mean, frankly, I think they both deserve their own series. But for me, my main problem with Venom and Carnage has been how violent some of the like Spider-Man stories are with them. I feel like there's really not a solid room for a writer to tell a story with Venom and Carnage without like killing off Spider-Man supporting cast members. And I feel like this like just goes so far against like what how you create a great Spider-Man story that it doesn't always lead to like the best end result. So taking these characters and their own solo stories and building science fiction concepts around them is totally the route that I want Marvel Comics to go in, and also what the publisher has been embracing over the past couple years. So I really feel like Venom and Carnage as comic books are different than previous Venom and Carnage runs, and I want Marvel to have a reason as to why they're publishing each and every comic book over in their line. What I'm really kind of like going against here and what I'm really decrying are these mini series that are like re exploring elements of 90s continuity that are like retro pastiches to like the olden days. I'm really worried that the comics audience in general is like aging up with each and every year. And I feel like the amount of people that, these kinds of comic books attract to are just dwindling down like more and more and more and more. And eventually, are we going to even have like a comic base of readers left? That's why I really want the publisher to embrace the future and the current elements of plot within some of these series. If anybody disagrees with me, I would love to hear their comments over in the article. I feel like I'm getting so spicy today with my opinions. All right, frankly, we have discussed enough Venom and Carnage today, but shockingly enough, I don't think we've discussed enough X-Men today. Let's talk about the most recent X-Men Monday featuring Steve Folks talking about Dead X-Men issue 1. This is coming in from Chris Hassan over at Adventures in Poor Taste, our personal favorite website. Here's a picture of Steve Folks. Dead X-Men, Dark X-Men has been tremendous. This man has had an amazing track record at Marvel Comics. Let's see what he has to say about his own just tremendous comic books. So here's Adventures in Poor Taste. First question for Steve. They say, it's okay. X-Men Monday is a pun-friendly space, as is this channel. Let's kick things off with a question about those dead X-Men from X-Fan Isgani's Flame, who said that with the issue's first data page, we see how much value Rachel Summers places on her former X Factor teammate Prodigy in the success of the mission. Without spoiling, will we see each member of this team get to strut their stuff and show how they were selected as X-Men prior to their deaths? The character of Prodigy for me has always been really special. I've loved how Kieran Gillen has used him in the past specifically. And I feel like he always has just this really interesting nature about him and his powers that set him apart from so many of the rest of the X-Men. Prodigy is certainly unique to the mission as the first issue laid out, but I tried to spread the love and celebrate what makes all these mutants excellent heroes. With no offense to past candidates like Micromax, I think the 2023 election slate was just a pure no-lose situation. Every one of the 6 characters up for consideration has every quality needed to be an A-list X-Man. The trick of this squad is that I didn't choose them, but the beauty is that they're all such icons of the franchise, and they interact so smoothly. I didn't count on the speaking lines exactly or anything, but I think out of every team book I've worked on, Dead X-Men most equitably shares the spotlight between its core 5. This is interesting commentary from folks. I really think Dark X-Men did a really good job balancing like the vast cast of characters, but I will concede the point that Madeline Pryor and like Alex as Havoc really had the like highest profile on the book in most of the character interactions. It did feel like some of the characterization was spread out across our core team of X-Men heroes. Sometimes it felt like Frenzy or Jubilee was the protagonist of the series. Other times it felt like Cannonball or Prodigy were the main characters. So really phenomenal stuff here from folks, especially in terms of the script. One thing that I think is just so great about the way that folks writes dialogue is it's always really eclectic and just really focused on the core of the character. Folks is so good at straying away from those cliches and really getting to the nuance of interesting character interactions. I think this panel illustrated by Bernard Chang just illustrates this great sense of like conflict within the state of the X-Men and really gets me excited to check out the next couple panels of the page. Plus, I think Sam has a super endearing line written really nicely from Steve Folks that introduces just a little bit of a cliched element that is perfect and staged just right. Sam says, "We won't let you down, coach. Send us back in." Ascani says, "Appreciate the enthusiasm, Sam." Also, just the fact that these dead X-Men are popping into these realities to try and read Moira's mind is a great setup and premise for the issue as well. Next, a question about the series' eclectic settings from X-fan Kanan. With the team traveling to the dead realities created by the Moira engine, what was your thought process on developing broken worlds? Did you want to keep them more in line with how things could possibly go during the main timeline, or do just some crazy, off the wall, alternate universe type stuff? Eagle eyed readers might remember a certain Immortal X Men page where Destiny had visions of things to come. Some of those visions, like Judgment Day, played out exactly as she foresaw. Others were possible futures, like a wicked vision of a demonic magic. So a few of the nods specifically harken back to that splash page. For the Moira engine timeline, in which we spend the bulk of issue 1 and pick up our villain, the idea was to game out a scenario where Orbis Stellaris surges ahead over the other Sinisters. We've mostly seen Orbis in the context of outer space, and Sword was an early Krakoan favorite of mine, so it felt right to lean into that title in some of the other space-bound corners of the franchise. I really thought Dead X-Men was going to pick up on more elements of X-Men Red, but what Steve Folks is saying is absolutely correct, and that the focus on a Sword as a franchise is really what Dead X-Men brings to the table, especially with how it references characters like Abigail Brand. It was so cool to see Orbis Stellaris talk about how he like weaved in this dark future for this alternate reality in the Moira engine here. It's always fun to flex wild alternate reality muscles, but the Moira engines all branch off from set points in the line's recent past. So we wanted to have our fun while keeping the deviations plausible. Sorry, Steve, you knew the second you wrote Dazzler dialogue you'd have to talk about this. X-fan Michael Anderson pointed out that the Allison comments that she isn't as immortal as she thought she was. Will there be follow up on this long, unresolved plot point that started in Chris Claremont's New Excalibur? Will we finally be given the reason why Dazzler can't stay dead? What can you share? Really fantastic plot point that some of these like eagle-eyed X-Men readers bring up about Dazzler's, lack of ability to die. Super interested to hear what Steve has to say about this plot point, especially as the book he's writing is called Dead X-Men. What I can share is that Kieran, Jordan White, and I discussed a few ways to address this. I'm a huge Dazzler fan, and this has long been a dangling oddity in her history. At no point will Dead X-Men grind to a screeching halt to provide wiki fodder, explaining exactly how and why Dazzler has come back from the dead before in pre-resurrection times. I just want to quickly say here that over the past week and a half or so, I've been trying to get into the Grand Blue Fantasy franchise to play the upcoming video game. And every time I do, I keep having to go back and reference the anime or the individual game. So I am so happy to hear that Western audiences and Steve Folks as a creator is not writing that series that way and is really just trying to bring all these elements towards the series in a more naturalistic way. I want to give a little bit of commentary on this because when I first read Dead X-Men, I had no idea what was going on. Even after reading the entire issue from front to back, I wish that series would have explained the premise in a way that was a little bit more legible and understanding to readers, aside from a few really matter-of-fact lines of dialogue. But overall, I think for the most part, if you've read enough Marvel comics and are really invested to the franchise, you can pick up on a lot of what Dead X-Men has to say. I just hope that moving forward, the book is able to introduce its premise in a way that feels a little bit more streamlined and cohesive for readers. Okay. X-Fan Echo was so happy to see Rachel in what's probably her most crucial role she's ever played in an X-Men story. What can you share about how Rachel's role in this story came to be? Was her inclusion your choice, or did Kieran Gillen plan to incorporate her into Rise of the Powers of Ten from the start? Rachel's role was actually one of the coolest and most natural evolutions of this project. I've been lucky to work closely with Kieran while developing Dead X-Men, and he's been wildly generous in playing back and forth to make sure our books work and complements Rise and X-Men Forever as best it can. Early on, before Steve Orlando and I got the work on X-Men Unlimited throughout the spring, I had my eye on Captain Britain and Rachel Summers. Since I knew my good friend Teenie Howard was wrapping up her long and awesome run of Betsy-focused books, it felt wrong to let Betsy and Rachel slip out of the spotlight for this final stretch of the Krakoan era, but they weren't naturally fitting into anyone else's plans. Yes, this is something that I've actually seen X-Men fans comment on lately, is the fact that they haven't seen quite as much Iskani featured in the main line as well as Captain Britain. I'm really happy to hear that Steve Folks kind of worked with some of the other X-Men writers and was able to flesh out a place for these characters in his core title. When the plot of Dead X-Men started to come into focus, I suggested one or both as additions to the cast, and over a few months of planning and writing, Karen and I ended up making Rachel incredibly central to both of our books. She's really the tether from Dead to Rise in more ways than one, and I really dig how organically that came about as we both refined our plots. Massive thanks to Kieran for being such a wonderful collaborator and guide. One more Rachel question from X-Fan Jen, who loved the data page showcasing the dynamic between Rachel and Xavier. Jen loves seeing Rachel as the strategist that she is, but now she's working with someone who doesn't fully trust her. And Charles is working with someone who doesn't fully trust him. How was it crafting that dynamic, as it's something that we'll see play out more as the story continues? Steve Folks says, without anything, definitely keep an eye on Kieran's books for how that plays out. I think Charles Xavier and Trust have been awkward bedfellows for a while now, and Rachel's an ideal character to press back where some other X-Men might be fall to incline in the line. The new Smasher, what a fun treat for fans of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers run. I'm assuming you won't see this version of Hosea again anytime soon. What can you share about him? Yeah, the character in Smasher definitely was set up in the background of that Avengers series. Definitely an interesting choice of a continuity to reveal here, and something that would have been really nice for Marvel's main publishing line. I wonder what ideas Steve Folks has in mind to implement the new Smasher back into the main Marvel Universe continuity. Folks says, never say never. I'm a huge fan of Hickman and Company's work on Avengers, and also just a huge fan of legacy characters in general. The main reason the Moira Engine timeline is set 15 years in the future is so I could show Hosea avenging his parents and carrying on their legacy. Wow, really fantastic stuff. And the fact that Cannonball is featured in the main book too, alongside Hosea within Dead X-Men, is really, really beautiful. It feels like Steve Folks is really plotting this series just incredibly carefully. I also wanted to find other subtle ways to nod each of the Dead X-Men's connections to other characters throughout other realities we'll see, hence Hosea and Roberto here for Cannonball, and Mercury and Armor from Prodigy's generation. I wouldn't say to look crazy hard for these nods, but they're in there for my own self-gratification. Man, it really feels like Steve Folks is such a big fan of this X-Men franchise and is just like devoted to fleshing out as many plot threads as possible to make this comic book really feel like as cohesive as it can be. X-Fan Iron wanted to say Dead X-Men 1 was an absolute hit of a first issue and one of the best first issues of the era. Now the question, what inspired your take on Moira in the issue, and how did you approach her as someone who has many, many versions of herself? Yeah, I think the Moira that we saw in Dead X-Men really appeared to be like late in continuity. I believe she was missing some limbs and just looks so deadly in this interpretation of the character here. I believe this is when the issue switched over to Vincenzo Carratu's work. I think he's a wonderful artist. Thanks so much, Iron. Hope you dig the rest of the mini series. I think it's okay to reveal in the script that this Moira is actually called Ahab Moira. When I started considering villains for this series, I searched hard for ex foes who haven't become protagonists or already had major moments during Krakoa. Ahab fits that bill, but Rachel had a big final feeling standoff with him right before Krakoa. And figuring out a way to loop him in felt like too much of a diversion from the meat of the story. Instead, I decided to double down on Moira, who's been at the heart of the Krakoan era, and take visual inspiration from Ahab to give this rotten take on Moira her own distinct look, which was designed by Vincenzo Carratu, who also brought her wicked weapon to life. We're in the 11th hour of our macro story, and further exploring the fulcrum of this epic seemed like the best use of my page count, especially since traveling to Moira's past lives was already the crux of this book. I am very, very impressed with how Steve Orlando is able to communicate, how he was able to construct and illustrate this fantastic and dense script for Dead X-Men here. What I find compelling about Moira is that she chose to cling to her humanity, even though she was at death's door. Now she's spent over a decade forcing herself to keep going, to survive by any means necessary, and has been losing her body and mind in the process. This is a desperate, reckless, mean Moira pushed beyond the more shrewd and cunning versions in the main timeline. Plus, she has a big axe, which the other Moira doesn't have. Big axes are cool, yeah? Definitely, especially when they incorporate a Zorn head. Next, a potential treat for those very patient Betsy Braddock fans, specifically Chris Garza and JB, who were wondering if you could tease Betsy's role in Dead X-Men. Steve Folks says, please see that meme of the little girl saying, why not both? Betsy's not a core cast member of Dead X-Men. You'll see a lot more of her in X-Men Unlimited. But Lucas Wernick's killer cover to Dead X-Men 3 has already revealed that we'll see a certain Miss Braddock popping up in the pages of Dead X-Men 2. As an extra tease for those dedicated Betsy fans, I'll say that David Baldion's take on her is so good. So excited to see Betsy return to the pages of Dead X-Men, especially to see what counsel and help she brings towards the plot of this upcoming issue 2. Before we wrap, X-Men Gen X for Life had a question that ties into your upcoming X-Men 97 miniseries. How do you differentiate writing books in the 97 era versus writing current Krakoan era X books? Steve says, let me just say for the record, there was a period of time where I was simultaneously working on aspects of Dark X-Men and Dead X-Men, X-Men 97, an upcoming redacted project, and 4 different X-Men Unlimited arcs, including one that'll end up being the equivalent of 6 print comics. And I did at times feel completely insane, especially trying to remember what had been released, what I had read early, and what was still top secret. That said, it's still a freaking privilege. I genuinely never expected to touch anything X in my career, let alone to juggle so much. The joy of 97 is that it's self-contained and familiar. I hear the voice actors in my head as I'm writing out the dialogue. I can picture exactly how these characters bounce off each other. Budameo and his team were so helpful in laying out our parameters and giving me extensive outline feedback up front. Plus, I've been reunited with my X-Men 92 House of XCI collaborator, Salva Espen. So Salva and I have 100 pages of animated action already collectively under our belts. So this is a Todd Nowak cover over for X-Men 97. I feel like Todd Nowak has just really leveled up as a creator, and I think this cover is a great showcase for why. With Dead X-Men, Kieran Jordan and I spent week after week sorting out timelines, sci-fi logic, real-world scheduling, who needed to be where, and all while I was trying to figure out how this cast would interact with each other and how best to tell a thrilling story that also celebrates 6 mutants and pays homage to a hugely impacted era as it reaches its end. And to make the art scheduling work, we had to lock in who was drawing how many pages well ahead of each time. meaning I had to extensively outline and commit to how long each scene would be, with no real room to adjust on the fly. In many ways, Dead X-Men was harder but also enormously rewarding. One's a classic cartoon tie-in with a lighter tone, the other is a fundamentally classic adventure with the stakes of all reality on the line. But mostly, I listened to Bjork in weird ambient music before writing Dead and the animated theme song before writing 97. What can you tease about Dead X-Men issue 2? What a phenomenal cover on this issue as well, huh? First and foremost, I can tease that Peter Nguyen and Guillermo Sanna join us on art, providing two very different, very cool new takes on this team and their mission. Very cool to see Peter Nguyen join the pages of Dead X-Men. Peter Nguyen, really fantastic, really expressive artist. I feel like will maybe bring out a different element than we've seen from some of the previous collaborators. But boy, I hope that Vincenzo Corrado is still featured on a future issue. I think his artwork is amazing. I was so grateful we pulled off the art jam we had on Dead X-Men, and I attribute anything folks dig about this book to everyone who drew and colored the heck out of it. Peter, Guillermo, Bernard Chang, Vincenzo Corrado, Lin Yoshi, I really like Javier Pina, David Baldion, loved Jonas Scharf, and coloring genius Frank Martin have made this book something so exceptional and so different from the other books on the stands right now. Huge thanks to them and to Jordan and Lauren Amaro for wrangling the scheduling necessary to make it happen. A crazed Moira is on the loose in this time strain, and she doesn't care about the consequences of her violent actions. Previously unseen aspects of Moira's past lives comes to light, and X-Men Falls, the mission shifts. All right, let's tease some upcoming panels from future Marvel Comics here. Here we have a glimpse over at Gambit and Rogue. Not sure where they're headed, but really love the expressions from these characters on this panel. We have one coming in from Sabretooth. For me, I really feel like this is probably part of Wolverine's current Sabretooth war. Here's a look over at Nimrod. This has got to be a Phil Noto panel over from a recent or future issue of Marvel's X-Men series. Really cool to see Shadowcat phasing out of Nimrod. And we have maybe what looks to be a Robert Gill panel for X-Force, or at least that's my best guess. We have a look at the underwater adventures of the very violent and dark Krakoan beast here. Really good stuff. Let's see what this is. Okay, my guess is that this is an RB Silva panel of Rasputin 4 from Rise of the Powers of 10. This is beautiful. I really love this character, and I'm also really excited that Rasputin is featured in both of the dual Krakoa miniseries too. Once again, I actually think this was just straight up a panel from X-Men 31. On Monday, when this article was published, that issue was not yet released, and we have Spider-Man and Ms. Marvel trying to cover up their station so that Nimrod isn't aware of some of their plans here. Okay. So that is going to be the end of our stream today. I just want to let you know here, it looks like per usual, we just do not have enough content to fill out a second stream tomorrow. Maybe what we'll go ahead and do instead is feature one more video review. So I'll try and at least have 3 video reviews come in this week. And also, as Marvel and DC continue to unveil new news stories, especially in the lead up to San Diego Comic-Con, I will try and have as many streams as possible. I want to say thank you so much for coming to check out our stream today. I want to encourage you to like the stream, to subscribe to the channel, and then just stay tuned for all our upcoming comic book reviews and live streams. I really love these books. I really love where a lot of these titles are headed, and I just can't wait to see where these books are headed next. Thank you so much for coming to check out our stream today, and we'll be back in the very near future to see where Marvel and DC are headed next. Thanks so much.